Poverty, strife, conflict, and corruption. These are common narratives on the continent. But this is another side untold, the side of wealth, riches, and the continent with most blessed resources. Until you change a man's thinking, you cannot change his life. Africa's story has been written by others. We need to own our challenges and solutions and write our stories. Only Africans can build Africa. My name is Henry Williams. Join me on the agenda on Love War Plus. Issue on the African scene, the politics of succession in Africa, the crisis of stability and power. How critical is this?
Police arrested 4 people for the violence in Johannesburg, while 8 others were arrested.
On today's edition of the show, we will set our sights on landlocked West African nation Mali, where opposition supporters, fed up with the corrupt political system, lack of economic opportunity and continued violence, have seen the demands somewhat met with a military coup that has ousted the President Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta. Now, amidst condemnation from the international community and ultimatum from regional body ECOWAS, the military seems to have yielded to calls to hand over power. Now, with Mali leadership in transit, we will be looking at all the facts and all the sides. We'll be seeking to ask the tough questions, hoping to arrive at an answer to Mali's political quagmire. Thanks for joining us on The Agenda, a show for Africans and by Africans. My name is Henry Williams. And at that, I want to say a great welcome to you once more. And don't forget, you can join us watching us at our website at www.lovewarplus.tv. And don't forget to send in your comments and contributions. We'd like to hear a lot of feedback from you because that's what we thrive on. And now, letting you in on my guest for today's show, I'd like to welcome 2 extraordinary gentlemen whose words are talking Africa and the African scene carry a lot of weight. Tochukwu Ezukama, public affairs analyst, joins us. Thank you very much, Tochukwu. And yes, I see Adeni Kunu with me on the show. It's great to have you, Ni.
Thank you. It's a privilege to have me here. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. Welcome, gentlemen. And yes, we look at issues happening in Africa. But first, let me thank none other than my dear friend and brother. His name is Emenike Agu. He's held forth on the agenda for some sessions, and I do appreciate that. And it's great to be back. We'll be looking to taking a discussion to another level. Now, talking about Mali, we've seen leaders from Nigeria, Senegal, Ivory Coast, Niger, and Ghana gather in Bamako, Sheraton Hotel, trying to break the deadlock between Mali's President Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta and protest movements demanding his resignation. Now, fast forward, yes, we've seen a military coup take place, and yes, the president has been asked to step down, and now Mali faces a transition. And the question being asked by analysts is, what now? What next happening in Mali? But let's give you a recap before we move on. Let's take this report. I'll be right back.
A coup that was no surprise. Mali is under military rule. Colonel Assimi Goïta has declared himself the head of the junta that deposed President Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta this week.
We can't afford any more mistakes. With this intervention, we have put the country first, Mali first. That is why we have assured our support and told them to start working, because we no longer have the right to make mistakes.
For months, Keïta had resisted mass protests against his government, giving few concessions. He even pressed ahead with controversial parliamentary elections. On Tuesday, rebel soldiers arrested Keïta and his Prime Minister Boubou Cissé, driving the pair to a military base on the outskirts of Bamako, which they'd seized that morning. Late into the night, Keïta announced his resignation on national television.
Nous dire ma décision de quitter mes fonctions. Toutes mes fonctions.
To tell you my decision to resign from my functions, all my functions from this moment on, and with all the legal consequences, the dissolution of the National Assembly and that of the government.
Et celle du gouvernement. De conclure que cela devait se terminer par leur intervention.
If today it pleased some elements of our armed forces to conclude that it should end with their intervention, do I really have a choice? I submit to it because I do not wish any blood to be shed to keep me in power.
Pour mon maintien aux affaires.
The new military leaders briefly closed Mali's borders and announced a nighttime curfew. They pledged to hold new elections soon. In the meantime, a transitional president would be appointed, either from civilian or military ranks.
Civil society and political social movements are invited to join us to create together the best conditions for a civil political transition, leading to credible general elections for the exercise of democracy through a roadmap that will lay the foundations for a new Mali.
On home soil, jubilant scenes on the streets of the capital Bamako suggested popular support for the overthrow of the president.
The whole of Mali has been liberated by a Republican force. The Malian people support them from above and from below. We are really very, very happy. There is no education, there is no health, there is no security. Everything has been told to the man. He does not want to listen to the people.
The prominent opposition movement, the M5 RFP, which has been driving mass anti-government protests, said it would work with the junta.
The military are Malians. They are patriots who have only supported this democratic, republican, secular struggle of the M5 RFP, which was carried out by the sovereign people of Mali. So this is only the culmination of a process that was set in motion by the people of Mali.
Coup leaders also met with the ruling coalition, who, while condemning the overthrow, were resigned to a new order.
Nous avons à l'unanimité, en tant qu'acteurs politiques, démocrates et républicains,
we have said unanimously, as political, democratic and republican actors, that we condemn any seizure of power by force of arms, as republicans and democrats. However, what's done is done, and it's the country that's calling us.
et c'est le pays qui nous appelle.
But the international community has unanimously condemned the coup. Regional Bloc, the Economic Community of West African States, will send a delegation to Mali and has called for Keita to be restored to power. Meanwhile, the African Union has suspended Mali. The UN Security Council has demanded a return to constitutional order. However, restoring the previous constitutional order will be a difficult task. On Friday, thousands of people demonstrated in Bamako, celebrating the coup.
All right, that report gives us somehow the whole 9 yards of what has happened in and transpired in Mali, let me put that. But yeah, the question looming is what next? The transition now kicks in, and where is Mali going here? Let me pose a question to Chukwu. What do you make out of what has happened in Mali now?
Mali. Well, what is happening in Mali is really quite interesting. And there's been an agreement on the transition period, which is fine. The ECOWAS and AU, all of them were opposed to the coup, which is understandable. The era of coups in Africa is over, or should be over.
Is it over?
It should be over. It's almost over. There was when it was a fad, and there was one coup after another. Nobody really questioned these coups then or opposed them. But the soldiers in general have done African countries a major disservice. Taking an example from Nigeria, think of if there was never any military coup and the kind of leaders we had as of then, how committed they were to the well-being of the people and how hard they worked. in Western Nigeria, you had the first TV in Black Africa. You had a very functional, effective, and efficient, universal, free primary education. I think up to secondary school level. Eastern region of Nigeria had the highest growing economy in the world as of then. Then the soldiers came and turned everything upside down. So we're tired of military rule. So they've been condemned. It's very sad that there was a coup, because the soldiers could have exerted some influence from behind the scene. But the problem you can see is very similar to Nigeria. He said, one of the clip we watched said, there's no education, there's no health, there's no security. So it kind of sums up the problems we are having in Nigeria. And the Nigerian situation really requires some solution. Nigerians need to rise up in protest, not so there will be military coup, but so there will be change. We are tired of this stagnation. Even it's not stagnation anymore, it's political and social retrogression. We are sick and tired of it. So it's high time we rise up in protest.
We are sick and tired of it. Well,
yes.
If you look at the count, if you, from some research, Nigeria has had 8 coups. Sudan has had 15 over the years. Ghana has had 10. These are some of the countries that top the list in terms of coups. Nii, do you think we've had our fair share? Do you think we are tired, as Tochukwu points, about tired of coups?
Well, maybe,
especially when leaders choose to perpetrate themselves in power. And the people can't seem to find another way to really unseat these leaders who are sit-tight. Does the coup come in as a breath of fresh air somehow, somewhat?
Well, if we have a retrospect of why Nigeria went into the first war, it was simply as a result of, the unreliable approach to governance and administration of civilian authorities. Don't forget that there were lots of injustices leading up to the 1967 to 1970 coup. If we check the comparison of the First Republic and the Fourth Republic, you'd agree with me that in a 21-year history of this Fourth Republic, the civilian administration had only been able to manage about 7 years. The rest had been handled by retired military generals. And these retired military generals who have, civilian clothing and are supposed to be civilian leaders have actually demonstrated military administrative styles. You can argue with me, but I have 1,001 reasons to put forward. So when you talk about Nigeria within the context of Mali, you have to also understand that virtually the reasons Mali has its military leaders, upset or upturn the supposedly democracy platform is simply because of what has actually caused lots of coups, as you mentioned, reading out the statistics like Sudan at 30. So if I even did an
15 rather.
15, thank you. So if I even did an examination of, Africa and the ECOWAS region where Mali is even located, is there a proper democracy in Togo, in Niger, in Benin Republic, until Omar al-Bashir was sent packing? So if you look at several African countries, they only have civilian clothing. Their style is gestapo, is despotic. So, but one of the problems of this Mali is because at about half of the entire population, as we speak, doesn't have access to education. And this is actually the second coup in about 8 years in Mali. There was a coup in 2012 before Boubacar Sisse Keita came to power. And he was supposed to... He came in as a messiah. Came in as a messiah. And one of the things that actually happened back then was the northern part of Mali had been taken over by the Tuareg rebels. So he came in, there was an agreement, and the agreement was supposed to actually lead the way into having solutions. But by 2018, when there was another election that gave him a second term, they said most of the things they agreed to do. And don't also forget that after the agreement with the Tuareg rebels, the issue was that other factions of militants said they were not captured in the agreement. Don't forget that we have an abundance of gold in Mali, amongst many other things. So the northern part of Mali has remained mainly ungovernable since this particular ousted leader came to power. And don't also forget that the courts gave verdict on certain elections that happened.
The judiciary, the role of the judiciary.
Exactly. So if you look at the judiciary, more or less like a judiciary that appears to be very toothless, whose process of getting somebody to head the Supreme Court has been questioned repeatedly, I think it is not far from what we have in Mali. It is just that the military in Mali has not been civilized enough as our military. And don't forget that the consolation for maybe our military is because their former bosses are the ones in power. Don't forget that once you are somebody's boss or superior in the military, even after you have retired, remain the person's superior. So perhaps the allegiance we find in the supposed democracy we practice is as a result of the respect that Buhari's subordinates have for him before he retired.
So in essence, what you're saying, we're not really out of the woods, really.
No. The woods are there. They've not been uprooted. They've not been cut down.
It's based on convenience right now.
Most definitely. But if you look at it, we seem not to be listening. So Chukwu would agree with me that essentially the problems that allow the military coup to take place in different parts of Africa happens to be the reason that Nigeria as a country is bedeviled by now. So we never can tell because change is a constant thing. But nobody tells you what is the manner or what is the mode of change. So change has happened in Mali. And if the people are telling you that they see the military officers led by a 38-year-old, in fact, don't forget that's about the age of Gowon when Nigeria went to war in 1967. There's something about it.
The thing is this, that when the British came and roped different people into one country, people not interrelated in any way, different culture, different languages into one country. And these are people who didn't know anything about democracy until the white man came. The earliest vestiges of democracy can be traced, or the origin of democracy, to the Greek city-states.
7th century Greek city-states.
But after Greek lost his independence, first to Macedonia and second to Rome, then democracy disappeared. It reappeared more than 2,000 years later in the US. In the intervening period, the Europeans built the foundation, social, political, economic foundation for democracy. So you came from nowhere, brought a bunch of people, tribes, kingdoms together, and say, now we give you a democratic constitution. But they lacked the wherewithal. They lacked the social, the mindset, the social foundation, the political foundation. So it's like building a house without a foundation. The house was unstable. So that we had problems in the first republic.
It's a borrowed experience, rather.
Yes, and the people were not prepared for it. So the problems Nigeria had in the First Republic was expected. There were to be problems. The question is, how much problems? You should have allowed the civilian leadership to handle these problems on their own.
Because that was part of the process.
Evolution, the political evolution. So when soldiers came and truncated the process, they created more problems. If we go back to Africa, to countries like Senegal, Kenya, Botswana, and a few others, where there has been no military coups.
Exactly. That's juxtaposed.
They are doing much better.
That's a good scenario.
But you know, one of the things that I would appreciate, sorry, permit just my brief interjection here. When you call a place like Kenya, we know how long Arab Moi was there and the disagreements and the deaths that happened. Yes. So, you know, we don't define military coups only by the uniform. We define it also by the system, by the happenings in the government. Yeah. Kenya, since independence, has not had more than 3 leaders or 4.
Exactly.
And it has had independence since the 60s. So what kind of democracy keeps people in power for excess of 12, 20 years?
It turned out better for the people of Kenya than military coups turned out in the countries.
Well, I disagree. It's debatable.
Yeah,
it's debatable anyway. But you have a point.
So the point is that in Nigeria, the soldiers were in power for a long time. They acquired a lot of power, influence, and wealth. And these are 3 very important factors when it comes to politics. So they will remain influential, they will remain relevant for a while. You can't wish that away.
Okay.
It's like South Africa, where there's no more appetite. But the whites for centuries acquired wealth. They acquired influence. They acquired power. You can't wish that reality away overnight. So white influence, white power, economic power, at least social power continues to remain in place.
Now he has opened another. Permit me also. Permit me also say. No. It's a chapter that is all encompassing.
Okay.
And I'd not like us to isolate it because we have to have a broader perspective of the seemingly intractable problems that we are facing. When you talk about South Africa, I think that there are very deliberate legislations that can go to a large extent in dealing with these issues. For instance, in South Africa, there's what we call affirmative action. Affirmative action means that if you're employing 6 somewhere, you must strike a balance. Don't also forget that the blacks in South Africa are in excess of about 90% or 90% of the entire population. So the affirmative action was meant to ensure that you don't leave out blacks in employment, in promotion, and in benefits. But at the same time, the legislation, for me, which I believe is defective in South Africa, doesn't make it compulsory for you to follow the affirmative action. So if we're talking about people who have acquired wealth and power and influence over the centuries, but you are now in power, you are not making deliberate legislations to quash those things, I tell you it's going to be a problem. And that is why between then and now, even now as we speak, since 1994 that South Africa attained independence, more whites have acquired a certain percentage in addition to the wealth they have, because the structures that were not made deliberate to deal with those issues have been left optional.
And
so this
that's true. Salmons,
exactly
that way. Okay, yes. Mali has taken us to different places on the continent, and rightly so. It's expected because these systems and situations happening in different parts of Africa are more like the same experiences we're facing.
Yeah.
We can compare and contrast what is happening in Mali and what is happening in Nigeria. We do share a similarity, if you do agree, gentlemen. But looking at the major issues here happening in Mali, as we look at them going through this political transition, which, according to the ultimatum given to them by regional body ECOWAS, is to terminate today, 15th. And so they are supposed to present someone to take over a civilian, the civilian representative now, according to what ECOWAS is saying.
ECOWAS is a bunch of jokers.
Okay, but let's listen to what the opposition is saying. What are their demands here? What are Mali opposition asking in the midst of corruption and cronyism? They cite corruption, cronyism, weak public services, national leadership, electoral malpractices, and government's inability to bring an end to communal jihadist violence. Does that sound familiar? Let's take this report and we'll be right back.
Anti-government protesters in Mali have intensified demands for President Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta to step aside in the governance of the country. At a press conference in the capital, Bamako, the June 5 movement also insisted that the West African States Parliament be dissolved. They also called for a public transition from the current government. We told ECOWAS that we would not want the Malian people to feel that ECOWAS has the sole objective of keeping a president in power against the will of his people. ECOWAS must not be an instrument for protecting heads of state. It must be an instrument at the service of the interests of the people. That is what we told them. Reports say ECOWAS mediators met Keïta on Friday, and they also met the influential Imam Mohamed Dicko of the June 5 movement in an attempt to reach a resolution. The protesters are demanding that Keïta resign over his perceived failures in tackling the dire economy and Mali's 8-year jihadist conflict.
All right, and there the opposition say, look, ECOWAS, you should represent our interests and not your interests. We've seen negotiations fail. So high-profile visits from the former presidents of Nigeria, Goodluck Jonathan, were there, you know, even our president, Muhammadu Buhari, was there to wade into the issue. But the people were very resilient in their demands. Why do you think they failed,
Well, they failed because they are refusing to do what leadership is all about. You know, there is a psychological disposition and there's a psychological anomaly that has taken place over the years where leaders suddenly see themselves as demigods who are not accountable to the people. And that is why some legislation could just come that doesn't take cognizance of the yearnings of the people. As much as we wouldn't want to countenance military interjections of supposed civilian leadership, I think strongly that the ECOWAS community must take a step, just hold their brakes and listen to what the people are saying. If you took a poll there right now, you'd agree with me that the people say it is not that they love the military per se, but they love the fact that the former president has been sent out. That
serves a short-term purpose.
Well, short-term, 2012 to now, it's about 8 years out of maybe about 10. So what I'm saying in essence is we should realize that the people are yearning for something. And you see, the ECOWAS body is a very hypocritical body. And it's a body that appears to be going the way of many leadership across the world that feel that the people are their subjects. Don't forget, Alassane Ouattara of Ivory Coast or Côte d'Ivoire is gunning for a third term that constitutionally should not be.
Wrong, yes.
And the ECOWAS region, at the moment, they are not clamping down on him that say, you cannot continue. Yeah. So the hypocrisy of ECOWAS and their lack of knowledge about what is even happening among them is obvious. It is the same Ivory Coast that actually showed allegiance to France and declared the eco currency that actually was supposed to be what Nigeria is, being the country with the largest economy, but now Côte d'Ivoire is kowtowing to France as led by the same Alassane Ouattara. So the ECOWAS body seems to be joking at the moment, and until they tell themselves the truth, especially with their despotic leaders as members who really have overstayed and continue to review the constitution. If you look at the central country of Cameroon, for instance, Cameroon is not part of ECOWAS, but Cameroon has that Paul Biya, and it is something-year-old who is there. And it is the same ECOWAS region that continues. Why is it that it's not difficult for ECOWAS region to cut ties with despotic government? It's not difficult to do. Why is it difficult for the likes of France, the likes of international community to say, if you have spent so and so time, we cut it off? They are producing younger leaders in their country, but they are supporting gerontocrats. So stay here. So let Africa stop misbehaving and ECOWAS stop doing the greater disservice to its people.
Is this really about the longevity of the age of the leaders? I really don't think so.
No, it has nothing to do with age. Age has no relevance when it comes to...
I disagree with you, please.
I'm coming. When it comes to leadership, as long as the leader is not that old and senior, Ronald Reagan came to power at the age of 69.
And when did he leave, sir?
He was there for 8 years at the age of 77. So, and he did an outstanding job for as far as conservative ideology.
Did he review the constitution of the U.S. to extend the 2 terms?
Excuse me.
I'm sorry, did he? That's the fundamental.
We're not talking about age.
Sorry, please.
We're not talking about, we're talking about age, not tampering with the constitution.
That is what I'm saying. Many of these African leaders have tampered with their constitution. It's what I'm saying.
You have a point
It's
there,
about age, okay? Winston Churchill came to power first at the age of 65 and came back again when he was in his 70s. And he became one of the greatest leaders in history. The thing about age in leadership is that nobody can dash you power. John F. Kennedy came to power at the age of 43. He dislodged older politicians to win the election. Nobody stood out of the way. It's time for the youth.
In line with that, we've heard the President Kagame saying, look, the youth must actually participate. Nobody's going to hand you power.
At the age of 46, he dislodged McCain, who was 69. So nobody stepped back and said, Mr. Young Man, go lead us. Nobody can ever dash you power. You fight for power. According to a one-time U.S. president, the struggle for power is not for everybody. It takes a unique kind of man to win the struggle for power. So coming back to Mali, there's hypocrisy among West African leaders, undoubtedly, because human behavior is driven by interests. Socialists want to protect socialistic interests. In the U.S., Obama represented an interest. Trump is representing another interest. Okay? So in West Africa, you have leaders who are not really Democrats. But Democrats are not bred overnight. It takes a process. Let them leave these non-democrats.
They must go through the cycle, right?
It's a process. Revolutions will always fail. The Soviet revolution failed. We've tried to force it on the system. The Chinese revolution was beginning to fail until Deng Xiaoping came and tried to bring back capitalism into the system. So I don't believe in all this revolutionary, kill everybody and let's start anew. It takes us nowhere. Leave the old politicians, let them battle it with their people. Nigeria is slowly improving, but we don't know that. In the past, people rig the election with impunity. You don't even have to run for the office. It's just for your godfather to pencil your name in and cancel the name of the winner. That doesn't happen anymore. Okay. You rig elections these days by stealth, not what are you going to do about it. In the past, we never heard of a case where politicians, former politicians, or even active politicians were being prosecuted in court and jailed by a civilian government. It's now happening. So in so many, many ways, Nigeria is getting better. Unfortunately, very slowly.
Very slowly.
So the soldiers should stay out of politics and leave the masses and their leaders to sort these things out over time. It takes a very long time. And it's any kind of change that will endure must take a while.
All right, that's Tochukwu's position, which I'm very sure Nii disagrees with. But one thing is certain, we will definitely talk more about this. What did the judiciary, what role have they played in all of this? And what role has the judiciary to play in all the issues that have happened on the continent when we talk about coups? Did the judiciary fail first before these things happened? We'll be taking a look at this when we come back. We'll take a very expensive break because time is fast spent, but we'll take this break. When we come back, we'll be looking at what the ECOWAS summit we just held, the 75th just held, talking about what to happen next in Mali, what was the conclusion and all of that. Stay with us, we'll be right back.
We must remember that every one of us has something to give, something to contribute. Only Nigerians can help develop Nigeria. All that we require in our nation for our prosperity, our security, our progress will come from within us and And therefore, each one of us must be ready and willing to be a vital part of it.
All right, great to have you back. You're still watching The Agenda, and we've been talking about Mali's political transition. What next? What does it portend for the future? A very precarious one, say some analysts. Don't forget, you can watch us on the go when you log on to our website, www.loveworldplus.tv. We'll surely love to hear what you have to say, your comments and contributions. And yes, I would dare to open the phone lines if you'd like to join us on this discussion. Share your views. What do you think about what is happening in Mali? Does it relate to what's happening in other parts of Africa, like Nigeria? Well, let's hear your thoughts. One thing is certain, the transition is on, and yes, on the 7th of September, in Niamey, Republic of Niger, West African Regional Summit opened with its focus on Mali. Let's take a look.
Les Nations Unies pour l'Afrique de l'Ouest et le Sahel. Vouloir rester en place pour permettre aux chefs de la CEDEAO, son Excellence M. Abdallah Bourema, président de la Commission de l'organisation coïncide donc avec la dernière année de cette vision.
All right, that's what went down. And yes, they arrived at a conclusion, which we'll be talking about much later. But Nii, you have actually registered your concerns when it comes to ECOWAS.
Yes, one of the things that my friend said here, Tochukwu, was the fact that nobody gives power to you. You have to fight to get power legitimately, and it's not about age. But I would differ in the sense that most of the people that are very old as leaders, first around the ECOWAS community and in some parts of Africa, tinkered with the Constitution. He talked about Ronald Reagan. He talked about another person, Winston Churchill. They didn't touch the Constitution of their country. They played by the rules, right? They just played by the rules. So most of the people that are here, theirs can be described as very contrary because they tinkered with their constitution to favor them. And that is my concern. Then I think that to a great extent...
Does that make the peace that they have quite fragile, if you put it that way?
Well,
whatever peace that it reigns in their presence, quite
most fragile. Of them actually do these things in consonance with the military, just to keep people subjected, basically. And another thing is, don't forget that the most exalted office of leadership, political leadership in every country is quite demanding. You travel often. You see your family less often. You do a lot for a big country. So that means somebody's health. And we know that as somebody ages, quite frankly, physically you might not have the capacity of somebody who's younger. That is a fact of medical science. So I just feel that we should also consider oftentimes the health of the person who is to take leadership because of the rigors of the office and especially the complexities of leadership in these times. Then let me go back to Mali. One of the things people are not looking at is the geographical reality of a country as Mali. At the moment, Mali is a little above 20 million. Yeah. The geographical space of Mali, the geography of Mali is let me say approximately 500, but it's about 500,000 square kilometers. Nigeria is over 900,000 square kilometers. But do you know the picture? You have 500,000 square kilometers occupied by 20 million, less than 21 million people. The population of the people in Lagos, that is just above 3,500 or so square kilometers, is more than those living in Mali that has 500,000, approximately 500,000 square kilometers. So
there are large swaths of land.
So now you have lots of land that cannot even be manned by the military, even by the intelligence. And let me also give you another picture. after the coup that resulted in the ousted president in 2012, the French supported with 5,000 troops that were supposed to be there for only a few weeks. Up till this moment, the French troops are still there. Listen again. The UN also sent supporting troops, 15,000 plus, they are still there. The G5 Sahel region sent 5,000, they are still there. So essentially, it seems as if the military themselves, the Malian military, are beginning to have less say in terms of intelligence and leadership and incursion against those people by the foreign people. And they are saying that we don't need it. Please, I need us to understand the underbellies of the military coup. It even transcends Boubacar Sissé Keïta himself. It's about how the military see themselves amidst the international support troops and who is taking the charge. So that is just one fundamental. Now, for the first time, I beg you please, for the first time, the US has appointed more or less like an envoy for the first time for the Sahel region. And whenever the US comes into a place, they don't take the back seat. They take the controlling seat.
So there's a tussle. There's a tussle.
I'm telling you, it even goes beyond Boubacar Sissé Keïta. So let us understand that there's a global impact, a global bulwark in place, and the military perhaps feel this is our country. We need to be at the fore of everything we're doing. So I need us to understand that there's a global dimension in this conversation. It transcends them. Don't also forget that the reason the French are always there is the fact that the French has not even let go of our colonies. Yeah. Virtually all our foreign reserves are domiciled compulsorily in the French Central Bank. They give you how much you can withdraw. If there's any interest made, they tell you what to withdraw. And if there's any new mineral resource found in any of the Francophone country, the French have right of refusal. What are we not saying here?
That is not a new phenomenon.
From time immemorial, we've known that Western interference or Western help has never been altruistic here.
No, there's no free lunch, even in Freetown.
Is there more that meets the eye happening
I don't think so. Mali has always was a French colony and has always been under the supervision of, I don't want to use the word control, of France. The kind of independence the French gave to their former colonies was not exactly the same that the British gave to their former. The French had what they call assimilation policy. If you behave like us, think like us, act like us, you become one of us.
Okay.
The British had indirect rule. You remain what you are, behave your own way, and we rule you. That's why they have to appoint chiefs. They ruled through the chiefs, indirect rule. And when the British let go, they let go to a greater extent than the French. That's why General de Gaulle had problems with Sékou Touré of Guinea, because Sékou wanted total independence from France. And the rest said, no, we go by France semi-independence, where they retained some control. After the First World War and Second World War, the world was carved into spheres of influence. And Mali is under the French spheres of influence. The Americans will not come to Mali and play any major role without that does not conform with the French interest. So the French remains in control. These other international organizations do not have as much political clout. Yeah. The Americans are concerned with terrorism in West Africa. That's why this military involvement and appointment of envoys, not to alter the dynamics of geopolitical politics of Mali.
Okay, that's your position,
yes.
And not to alter the dynamics. Okay, there were diverse reactions to that issue, but one thing is certain, ECOWAS has set in motion a process, an ultimatum for Mali to choose who will take them into the democratic dispensation. Chair of the ECOWAS Authority of Heads of State and Government they will convene a meeting today talking about the political situation. And the story says, Chair of the ECOWAS Authority Heads of State Government, President Nana Dankwa Akufo-Addo, Chairman, Authority of the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, has convened a meeting on the political situation in Mali. The meeting will hold at the Presidential Lodge in Accra. today. Now, talking about the communique that came out of the last meeting on the 7th of September, it says let me read it out to you. It says, on the political situation in the region, if you have that slide up, regarding the situation in Mali, the authority reaffirms its determination to ensure that constitutional order is quickly restored in Mali with a political transition led by a civilian president and prime minister for 12 months. The authority maintains all decisions taken at its extraordinary summit 28th August 2020 and notes the ongoing consultations between Malian stakeholders initiated by the National Council for the People's Salvation, CNSP. Authorities directs that the heads of transition and prime minister, both civilians, be appointed no later than 15 September. Now, it says the authority welcomes the departure of President Ibrahim Boubacar Keita for medical treatment abroad and wishes him a speedy recovery on the 17th. And it says the summit commends the ECOWAS mediator, H.E. Goodluck Ebele Jonathan, for all the efforts to find a sustainable political solution in Mali. So today we will see what resolution ECOWAS will arrive at. And with rounding off, gentlemen, I'd like comments from each one of you.
Well, I want to say that in terms of the international presence in Mali, don't forget that the U.S. gives for the problems in Mali about $45 million every year. And the U.S. will be withdrawing that under President Trump, who believes that the greater enemies and challenge that his administration has will be Russia and China. So I'm wondering where the $45 million will be coming from. And don't forget that only the U.S. has such deep pockets to help and the capacity. Another question you'd ask is, why do we continue to have the policy of assimilation? It was a colonial policy of assimilation. I'm aware of it. The British policy was called the policy of association. So the question that you'd have to ask the ECOWAS region is, why are they not questioning the policy of assimilation still in place, even after over 40, 50 years of many countries that have been liberated? And that's the reason Chombori Koi, the former employee of the African Union, was had to be taken up, because she was questioning many of those things. And for me, I don't want us to glorify the policies that held Africa in bondage. So in rounding off, I want to tell you that over 800,000 people in Burkina Faso have been displaced, and anything that comes to Burkina Faso comes to Chad, comes to Niger, comes to the northeast side of Nigeria, and could affect the country. So let the leaders wake up to the realities of our challenge so that we can get Africa out of chains.
Toshoku, quickly, 1 minute.
The thing is that the reality in the French, the U.S. had invaded Panama, arrested the president, Noriega, and jailed him in the U.S. without a murmur in the corridors of power around the world, because Panama is within the American spheres of influence. So whatever is happening in Chad, Ivory Coast, and other former colonies of the French is within the French colonial interest, sphere of interest. The problem in Rhodesia was settled in Britain. The problem in Liberia, in Sierra Leone, settled in Britain, British sphere of influence. And that remains, that's the world order. When that will change, or how that will change, is beyond any of us, because we lack prophetic powers. So what we do is play within what the present realities are, not wish for manna falling from above. The issue in Mali, I wish Nigerians will learn a few lessons from and learn to protest against their governments. We've been unable to do that because of a number of factors that inhibit opposition to authority in Nigeria.
Gentlemen, I want to thank you. You've given me a lot, to our viewers to think about when it comes to issues of governance on the African scene. Mali is a very, very important nation in Africa. And yes, we must look at what's happening in Mali beyond Mali. And that's what my guests have pointed out. It is something to learn from. And we certainly hope that peace will be restored and democratic leadership restored in Mali. Well, that's much we can take on today's edition of the show. Thank you very much to my guests. Thank you.
Thank you very much for having us.
Nii, fantastic having you. Thank you so much. And to our viewers, you remain our precious jewel. Thank you for staying with us on The Agenda. And do remember that our address is at www.loveworldplus.tv. You can reach out to us with your comments and contributions. My name is Henry Williams, and remember that only Africans can build Africa. Till next, God bless you and stay blessed for now. Bye-bye. Issue on the African scene, the politics of succession in Africa, the crisis of stability and power. How critical is this?
Police arrested 12 people for the violence in Johannesburg, while 8 others were arrested.